And good evening to you. My name is Maggie Mutesi. It's Real Talk, and as usual, we're coming to you from Lemigo Hotel. Now, joining me on this particular episode is Peter Baofu. Hope I got the pronunciation so right. About China a couple of times now, mentioned it a lot. Question is for me here, we've seen the president of China speaking recently at the World Economic Forum. I don't know if you watched that, did you? Yeah. I just seen an article you wrote about Donald Trump and Obama. I just want to mix this together. To you, as a researcher, someone who has made the world new order, I don't know if you're making a new one. Do you think China is the new champion of globalization?
By default, that is a key point over here. That's because America under Trump, soon on Friday, that will be his first day. That is the problem here. I have written an article on Trump, by the way. It was published a few weeks ago. There is something to do with what I said about the global order. It's the decline of America which allows someone like Trump to be popular. His populism is a major problem for America, for example. And I think that I disagree with those people who think that Trump's victory is an indication of a white backlash or conservative backlash in America. I think that those are just the symptoms. They are not the causes of the problem. The deeper problem for that is the decline of America. And that's why if you listen to Trump, he keeps repeating, I want to make America great again. To make America great again, which means that America is no longer great. So that's why you need to make yourself great again. If I say I want to be rich again, doesn't mean that I'm not rich anymore, but I want to be rich again. You understand me? That is the major problem. Now, by his policy, you can argue at the end of the day whether if you are a conservative like him, you like him. If you are a liberal, you don't like him. So I'm not going to say you should or should not like him, but I'm just saying his thinking in many ways are very, very conservative, even though he's not always a conservative in his life. If you look into his political affiliation, in the past, he was for the Republican Party, and then for the Democratic Party, and then for the Reform Party as an independent. But right now, his thinking is much more conservative. This can be a problem in terms of protectionism, for example, in terms of isolationism, for example. Why? Because America is no longer as strong as it used to be. Now America is very argumentative under Trump. Trump just said something to Europe, by the way. A few days ago, he was interviewed in a German journal or something like that, a newspaper, and he said, many of the NATO allies are not paying their due shares. We want them to pay. And they talk about Japan, South Korea, and say, well, you have not been paying that we have been paying. Why? Because America is not as rich anymore. Now America is fighting on every single thing because the U.S., as you know, right now has more than $20 trillion in national debt. That's a lot of money under Obama. By the way, this is another problem too. And that's why this is a major problem. The real problem for that is the decline of the U.S. And that is back to the question about the global order that I predicted more than 10 years ago. That is the problem here. And that's why the Chinese leader in Davos, for example, when he made that speech, he has in mind of the U.S. because China right now, the economy is the largest trading power on earth now, not America. And that's why it's dependent on China to engage in this kind of globalization. That's why they are trying to champion that.
Seeing Trump trying to make America great again, especially in industrialization, yes, telling all these companies to come back home, not to invest anywhere else, and seeing the American investments that have been made in countries like China, for example, and even in Africa, what does that mean for the global economy?
You see?
So when you make America great again, yeah, what about the rest of the world?
Yeah, well, this is another problem, and that's why right now many other countries in East Asia and also in Europe, and also in Africa and Latin America, so what are we going to do? Right now, some that America is going to retreat. Again, it depends on your economic ideology. If you are a conservative, you are much more likely to agree with him. This is ideology, by the way. There's no point of it.
Even go any further. Are you a conservative?
Huh?
Are you a conservative?
I'm independent.
Because I see you completely agree with him.
No. In fact, if you listen further, if you read the article, I am criticizing him. Why? There are several problems. Problem number one is that I wrote in the article is that Trump has three major traits in his personality. I'm talking about political personality, which conflict with each other. Number one, he's a very conservative. His thinking is very conservative. Number two, I call him a transactionalist because of his business experience. And number three, because he's a showman. He likes to promote himself. He can be quite impulsive in what he says. He uses a lot of rhetoric, which champions some people, benefits some people, but also offends other people. So, but if you think about this, these three personality traits, they contradict each other. And that's a major problem for him in the coming 4 years, number one. And number two, his populism is also a major problem too. So do I agree with that? No, but I'm not in charge. He is in charge. And therefore, this kind of personality trait and political personality will be a major problem, not just for the U.S., but also for the West.
Let's go back to the global economy. What is going to happen?
Well, I think that it's difficult to...
Since you actually...
Yeah, no, I understand. Yes, I do think that there is a trend of American protectionism under him in the next 4 years. Maybe in the next age, I do not know.
American protectionism, does that mean that other American companies are also going to pull out from the other economies? No.
That means that the U.S. government is going to engage in some trade policy which is going to protect the U.S. Let's say, for example, I think a few days ago, Trump just repeated his message that certain companies, unless they manufacture those things inside the U.S., they will put some kind of tariffs or some kind of...
We've seen him
yes, but this trade war can be self-defeating. Because by engaging in protectionism, you are not looking into your problems. You are blaming your problems on other people. One of the major reasons how come American products are not competitive is because they are too expensive. Look at the Chinese one. They are very cheap. I come here in Africa, I go to a lot of stores. I see a lot of things made in China. If you look at the prices, they are very, very cheap. Why? Because they are earning wages, very, very low wages. But in America, there are a lot of wages, they are very high. So how can you compete if they earn 1/10 of what you earn? You earn 8 or 9 times more than they earn. The average salary in the U.S., for example, let's say the income per capita is about $40,000 to $50,000. In China, how much do they have? Maybe $3,000 as the maximum. By the way, that is measured by income per capita without PPP, purchasing power parity. If you use the nominal exchange rate to measure that, they are even lower. How can you compete? When you charge, because what they earn is a lot, and what the Chinese earn is very little. How can you compete? You go to a store, you buy something, and you will see.
So let's look at the situation where America is protecting it, having the trade policy that is affecting America, and then we have these other economies. My interest now is, what do you predict is going to happen?
I think that we have to make a distinction between rhetoric and your wish and reality. Trump have a lot of wishes. Trump used a lot of rhetoric. We have to be very careful about that. The reality is something else. So he can say as much as he likes. He can wish as much as he likes. But at the end of the day, I think that he will learn on the job. That will be a reality check. That's what I mean. The reality check will dawn on him, and he will come with the understanding of things are not what he wants them to be. And there will be the final reality of the interaction between...
And then, do we see America still becoming a global champion?
No, I don't think that it will be a global champion under him, but I do think that things will not as bad or as serious as he might think that he's been thinking. I think that we should be very careful not to listen to his rhetoric. Trump is a showman, by the way. He's very impulsive. He's very good in rhetoric. He says a lot of things. You may find that very stupid, but he has certain audience in mind. But this doesn't mean that he's going to do exactly what he said. In fact, he already said that he will not do what he said that he could do. For example, climate change. He blamed everything on other countries, especially China, for that. Now he said that he's willing to listen and work out a climate deal with other people. And also about the Muslim. They talk about the Latinos, the Muslim, they are rapists, they are terrorists. Yes, but it's just for the presidential campaign, but he regretted afterward. If you listen to the final presidential debate, he said he regretted that he said that. So we have to be very careful about what he said. This is presidential rhetoric, but on the other hand, there's the final reality. There's a reality check. And he will understand. In fact, there's another person who just said that they are going to pick on China and prevent China from entering into South China Sea for the islands. I don't think the U.S. is going to do it. But it's rhetoric again. So we have to be very careful about what people said in rhetoric and what the reality is. The reality is often very different from what you said when you were campaigning or when you are talking something impulsively. So I don't think there's going to be this kind of thing that you have mentioned. I think the reality is somewhere in between.
Okay, in this order, when Trump, protects his country and then it comes back to him, where do you see Africa? Where in any way are we benefiting or getting affected negatively?
I think you will certainly be affected by what's going on in the U.S. Not just negatively, but also positively.
Give me the positives. I think they're even more interesting. In terms of trade, we see China increasing its...
There's a possibility. There is a possibility. One thing I would like to mention, because I heard people saying this, is that should the U.S. intervene in South Sudan? I heard about the news the other day. Now, one policy feature of Trump is something like this. In terms of foreign policy, I do not think that Trump is going to be driven by this kind of ideology, leftist ideology that Obama has, for example. Trump's America is much more interested in pursuing its own interests, but not with this kind of ideological attachment that, let's say, Obama has or Jimmy Carter has or something like that. Because of his business experience, he's much more interested in see what I should do and this, how it's going to benefit America and how it's going to work out, and what we should do to ask other people to pay for that too. This is very realistic because of his business experience. I call him a transactionalist. That's one trait. But the other one will work against him because of a conservative viewpoint again. You see that I said before, his personality is not unified. There are certain things in his political personality, they will conflict with each other. They will fight with each other. So on the one hand, this is something which may be good for Africa because they may not intervene into American interventionism in Africa. Say, I'm going to intervene in this, I'm going to overthrow this country, I'm going to intervene, send some Marines in and do this. Maybe that's good for you. Because I heard a lot of African leaders say they do not want America to come in and intervene.
So on aid you're talking about in the first place, why should they be given aid? Didn't you say in your new order or in your research that actually the only way for Africa to grow if it stops depending on aid?
Mm-hmm. Aid is also important for Africa, but I'm saying that do not become too dependent on aid.
Are we seeing the aid being cut off during the 4-year term of Trump?
I think so. I think that there is some kind of reduction of aid based on ideology.
All these theories are so unusual. I'll still stick to unusual, but thank you so much for having time to sit down with us.
Thank you very much.
And that's all we had for you on Real Talk. Keep watching RTV. My name is Maggie Mutesi. Good night.